I just knew I had to know how to do it. I just what I always want to do is make movies, and so I got into commercials and music videos and whatever. And then out of nowhere, a group of us kind of met each other, and Kurt, John, Dave, me, and they're like, hey, we're gonna do this movie. And the movie actually, if I remember the name, it's John Moyer wrote a movie called Redeeming LA, which is a great script, whatever. Legends are going through whatever, getting it ready. He said, I have an idea. What if we tell my life story? Let's make a comedy. And at this point, really, no one's made a comedy. I mean, what about Thad, which came out in '74 or something like that? It was the phone call. People didn't make comedies. They didn't make comedy features that were LDS at all. And so he tells the story about his life, which is the story of the singles ward. And we're like, this is great. And that's where that whole, the writer, it's his life story.
I had no idea of that, but yeah, obviously people listening, I assume, will know you primarily from that sort of golden era of Latter-day Saint comedy films. I mean, what was that time like when we had that string? But obviously, Kurt and Dave Hale, is that correct?
Yeah. Dave Hunter, yeah. Dave was. It's kind of funny. I think Dave just wanted to do something funny. I think he wanted comedy no matter what, because he's a really funny guy. And Kurt would do whatever, drama or comedy. He's a director, so he likes to grow his hair long, wear a hat, and tell everybody what to do. But no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, he's one of the greatest actor directors, which is not as common. But so when they kind of hashed out the story, because they kind of film school together, they talked to Dave and said, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" He's like, "This is great." And what's interesting is, in a Mormon comedy, we didn't realize certain aspects where you had the benefit of watching it after it came out, and people had watched it and told you like, "Oh, this is awesome." But when we first put it out, no one was watching it, and I was helping distribute the movies as well. And so we had in this theater in Provo, and I'm like, "Man, this is crazy. Why is no one watching this movie?" But we had no idea. This before Facebook, but there was a sense of, oh, they're making fun of the church. Nothing about the trailer said we're making fun of the church. It's very cultural, but we're crossing a chasm that no one had ever crossed, which is to be funny for an hour and a half culturally. And so out of nowhere, this FHE group from BYU went. It could have been UVU. No, it was BYU. And they left the theater right before, like 2 days before they're going to say, hey, you can't stay here any longer. They went back, emailed, and the next day, I'm pretty sure from the next day on, for I think almost 4 months, every matinee and night show was sold out for 4 months. And then we got into other theaters, and it kind of opened up this thing, and people were like, hey, it's not anti at all. But what's funny is the post stuff that happened, we would go to these towns to go promote the movie, Arizona or whatever. And every once in a while, you have like an old woman. And I remember this old woman came up to me. She's probably 100,000 years old. And you kind of like tapped me in the mouth. And I was like, hey, we cool? And she's like, how could you do that to the hymns? How dare you? And we're like, you're aware that we had to get permission from the first president of the church to do these hymns this way? And they're like, what? Yeah, they're copywriting. We just didn't make this up. They had to prove what we were doing. But it crossed this huge area where people, number one, you really didn't know how to laugh at themselves in the right way. You could with a group of friends and make a couple of jokes, but in a big open area. And the people had to kind of overcome a lot of stuff, because the movie came out and then the soundtrack came out. And a Deseret book, and of all their sales of all time, the number one book was the B book from Gordon B. Hinckley, Singles Ward the movie, and Singles Ward the soundtrack. And you could tell they're like, easy. We don't pass up prophets' books, buddy. Okay? we were going for passing someone's books. And it just so happened that it came at the right time. And we just did a few back-to-back, Singles Ward, RM, Home Teachers, Church Fall, Single Second Ward, Latter-day Night Live. We did like a string of these comedies. But the way we wrote them, it never went too far. It wasn't like anti at all. It really kind of poked fun. To be honest with you, I didn't grow up in Utah. When I read Singles Ward the first time, there's a few jokes I didn't get. And I was married when I moved to Utah. And so they're like, you need to go to Singles Ward at the BYU and just sit in one sacrament meeting, go to the class. I'm like, all right. So I tell my wife, I'm going to take my ring off, whatever. So I go in and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, it really is like this. Good gravy. Like there's, super unique, cool, interesting, and the weirdest characters in these singles awards. And I'm like, my gosh, man, this is spot on. So we kind of stuck with that, where we're going to make fun of the cultural side of it only. We obviously didn't go after anything doctrinal or whatever, but what ended up happening is the people sort of come out and making movies, which is great. But if someone tried a new comedy and it bombed, they'd immediately be in our face. I didn't like that movie. We don't make all of them. Relax. You thought me and these two guys made 70 movies in 4 years? Come on, man. So it kind of, people didn't know how to do it. The comedy was the hard one because you ride that fine line. Well, we had Dave Hunter, the producer, who's the grandson of Howard W. Hunter. You have Kurt Hell, who's the grandson of Bruce and Nathan Hell, the Hell Theater. And they grew up around a few of the apostles. So there's this, they made sure they were never going to go too far. And culturally, they grew up kind of in that environment. So they knew how to tell that joke the right way. And as an actor, you do what you're told to do, and you make it as funny as possible. And I was lucky because my character was that Johnny Utah that wore the braided belt that folded in, and they kind of let me kind of play with the character, and I try to make him as goofball as possible, tucked in t-shirts, the socks with the Birkenstocks. I mean, everything you could possibly do, because it was so common, especially then. I was like, man, who came with this outfit? This is the worst. But people come to me and go, dude, that outfit was freaking amazing, man. Anyway, so we got lucky. We came in the right time, and people responded to it. So we're able to make, more of them. And then we just kind of, everyone, I think a lot of the actors didn't want to do just LDS comedy and stuff. And I was totally opposite. I didn't care. I just want to entertain people. And when I saw how much effect it had on the youth and people in the church, I was like, wait, we can't ever stop doing these. We got to figure out. So we've got a couple that we're going to do. We're coming down the pike here that we're working on right now that I think people really respond to well and they'll like. But these things affected me. When I watched Cypher and Snow as a kid, I mean, these are movies that people don't even know anymore. Dude, a kid comes off the school bus, falls in the snow dead, and the credit roll's still going. Opening credits were still, I'm like, who does that? Who kills a kid before your credit rolls? Anyway, and it's this incredible story, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Phone call was awesome. I mean, that's Napoleon Dynamite is like ripped from that character, but which is great. It's awesome because people are going to see that anyway. But anyway, long story short, we noticed that people really responded, but the amount of movies that were coming out, we had to really be careful because they were associating everything with everyone else. So and there were some flops that came out for whatever reason, and it affected everybody. So if two flopped, people didn't want to come watch the next movie. Fortunately, that didn't affect us because we kind of stopped making for a little while, and all of our movies were made profitable. But there's a lot of people that made them, and they're great. So, we had a different outlook where we tell people that want to invest, like, just tell for sure you can lose everything. As long as you're willing to lose everything, please invest in this movie. That didn't happen. But if they knew that in advance, I think Kurt and Dave were smart that way, because what you're doing, what you're putting out is beneficial. It's great. So whether it makes money or not, let it affect one person in a good way. Let it affect 10 people in a good way. You know what I mean? And we're fortunate that way. But there was a lot that came out, and their budgets were really high. And so, we kind of learned how to do it the right way, and we got really lucky. So we always kind of took breaks. Had to go make real money. And I was like, making hundreds of dollars a year just wasn't enough. So I said, why don't we do some part-time work? And so anyway, and just now a few of us were getting back together. We're in the kind of the pre on a couple of them now. So we'll put out a couple more, because I now in my personal life, I want to present entertainment really for the members of our church. They're starving for great entertainment, and so I want to provide it, because we're fortunate we know how to write it. We're in a good way. So